Hi, welcome to Intuitive Journey with Desiree. I am Desiree Holmes Scherini, your host, and I am delighted to have with me today Sandy Glaze. She is a personal transformation, self-development coach, and in particular, an energy coach and energy worker, and with lots of interesting background and talents. And so we're going to learn more about her and what she does. Welcome, Sandy.
Hi, Desiree. Thanks for having me. This is an honor to be here and share
Well,
information with you. Yes.
yeah, and we've been she's had me on her show a couple times now where we get into some really interesting, juicy conversations. So that link will also be in the details for you to go over and visit her. So I've just really enjoyed getting to have our back and forth and conversation, and even more so when we're not recording some of the fun stuff that we say. So Sandy, I'm glad to have you as my guest. And
Thank
what
you.
I'd like to start with is what do you do? What would you say is your elevator pitch, I guess? What do you do?
So I work mainly with spiritual and emotional energies. So what happens, I'll have a client that'll come to me and they'll have something they want to clear. They'll have something they want to move beyond. They'll have something they want to achieve. So when they have a goal, depending on what it is, I always go in and I'll say, what's the true cause for this? So with the work I do, my answers are in my questions. So when I work with a client, I facilitate. I used to try to go in and try to shape the energy. That's too hard to do. And they don't get the sense of self when I'm clearing or when I'm changing something in them, how they see themselves, maybe. They don't get the sense themselves, the change in them. So I facilitate and I make them do the work so that they can be their best self. So an example, maybe they've had a past traumatic thing happen, or they have an emotion that they don't understand why they feel, I don't trust women. Like, when is there a real cause for that? Right. And then I go in, and what is amazing with the work I do, I never know where I'm going to go. I don't have the answer in me. The client has the answer in them. But when I go in and ask, do you know what this means? They look at me. Sometimes they say no, but most times they go, oh, yeah, I know what that is. Okay, let's go clear it. So I use a myriad of different techniques. I'm a life coach, I'm an advanced relationship coach, passion patterns. I have assertiveness training behind me, Reiki master. I use crystals, essential oils, sometimes EFT, like the tapping protocols. So I use a variety of different energies. I'm also a dowser, so I use a lot of different energies to be able to read the energy. And what my goal is to help get that client where they want to be in their life. Because sometimes if they've been knocked down or had something bad happen, and they feel an emotion like shame or guilt or something like that, do you need this anymore? Let's get rid of it. So that's what I do. So I'm in unseen energies, and I'm not going to say ahead of the curve, but I see what's out there with the client, what's going on energetically. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's what I do. So I go into the unseen energies because everything lands in the unseen energies before it lands in the physical reality. That's just one of the basic truths that have been kept from us. We think materialism is about as good as it gets. I know it's not. And even to the point where they've changed our worth now is our net worth. It's not who we are, and are we loving and careful. So a lot of manipulations out there. I help people see past some of that too.
That's awesome. And we will be, I'm going to, now I want to dive into step by step some of these different ways you do it. But before we get there, how did you end up getting into this line of work?
Well, this is what's really funny. When I went through hospitality for college, I took hospitality, and I thought I was going to be here to serve cocktails at 5. And then I realized, and then I got out of that, went into finance for 20 years. So I was serving in that industry, but I realized I'm here to serve a different energy. The Christed consciousness is what I'm here to serve. But what happened, it was an evolution over time. And I work in the financial industry, a few things happened, and you realize this is as corrupt as it gets. So when you try to do the right thing, you watch the game. Oh no, we're gonna pull this project back and we're gonna revamp it. And then it comes out, and all the advisors who sold this one particular product got a gag order. We couldn't even talk to our clients about it. Well, how one-sided is that when your securities commission authorizes this, so you have nothing to stand on? And then and what happens when people, if you're a financial planner and people trust you, they're going to trust you with their life savings,
Yeah.
and they're also going to trust you with everything that's happened in their life, good or bad. And I heard some horrible things. And what I learned over time, the people who didn't have money they needed a different amount of attention and a different skill set. So maybe they needed budgeting help or things along that. People who had money, they didn't need any of that. They knew all those things, but maybe they needed a tax strategy. So I started to learn that the people who didn't have money, I started to realize they're all the ones who've been through horrible things in their life. Like this world's a little messed up without
Yeah.
going into it too much. And we know, you and I know this, but when you look at the intentionality behind it by keeping some people down, and I
Yeah.
think they deserve better. So then I started, certain things started coming out. They were messing with the kids. I knew that was coming in 2015 here, where they were introducing a curriculum that just was insane. So that's what got me to write my book, because I thought I'm going to have to write this while like we're still human and we're still sane, so people can read it and go, well, I know that, and really get a sense of getting their orientation back energetically and emotionally. So my book is the first layer of the onion. So I published that in 2016, 2017, but by then the insanity is all underway. We already know, like, how much crazier can it be what they're trying to do to the little ones? Like, it doesn't get any crazier than that. But if we don't know who we are as adults, we can't navigate and see straight to make the right decisions and say, that's not appropriate, that's not appropriate, this is why, this is why. But be able to do it knowing we're coming from a good place.
So what's
So
the
I'm
title of your book?
Ending Global Loneliness, Finding Purpose, Love, and Dynamic Relationships. So it was funny. The one thing is too far away, but the one thing that had happened when I described to my publisher what I wanted for the cover to look like, two phoenixes, it came back and I described exactly what I wanted. It came back and I'm like, this is perfect. But what I didn't realize, I had chosen all the chakra colors. I hadn't even been introduced to the chakras like in 2015.
Oh.
So I come from 3D money material world.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been quite the journey. And once you find your passion, once you start going down these rabbit holes,
Isn't that the
it
truth?
doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Right. So
Well,
learning
yeah.
is what I've done. A fast track, but I've learned a lot, like astrotheology and going into the consciousness and understanding that energy, and looking at certain programs. And even though I'm not part of the secret space program or anything like that, I had an opportunity to work with a man who was in it, and I went in and found his trapped emotions, and it was in the future.
Wow.
So, and
Fascinating.
I asked him, it's crazy, right? So I look at him, I don't have his answer, but he doesn't. I go, how did you get a trapped emotion, anger in your future? Because I looked at all his chakras, couldn't find it, looked at his meridians, couldn't find it. And I'm like, is it in the past? No. Present? No. I go, your anger's in the future. What's that all about? Because I knew nothing about it. And he goes, because they're going to put me in action again. He knew. So
Interesting.
I've learned
Wow.
so much. So I've
There's a
learned
rabbit
so
hole.
it is, right? And that's not my overall interest. There's people who are covering that, and I watch certain people and I get certain information from it. But it was interesting to be able to know that it doesn't matter where your emotions are. They can be in your DNA that's not activated. I'm working on
Mhm.
that right now, but I'm not going to explain how I'm going to do that. But I can go in and pull out DNA from, your sixth strand or pull emotions from your sixth strand. What is it? I don't care. It doesn't matter. I just need to be able to locate it. Is this what's holding you back? Yeah. What happens if you really shine? And a lot of the work I do when I say to people, because they're so afraid of standing tall and being seen like we're supposed to be, I say, if you clear something, don't worry about it. Like, you don't have to stand up and go save the world. Like, you don't have to put a cape on or anything. Just
Yeah.
have fun, enjoy your life. And there's people called to stand up who will, and there's people who maybe will just hold space. It doesn't matter.
Isn't that the truth? That standing up is not easy. So I want to get into just like some of these things you talk to, like going in and pulling out and energy and all this. I know how a lot of this works, as also do Reiki and dowsing. I haven't used it a lot with Reiki I have. The dowsing part I have not used so much. And I understand like you can even douse over the body for the chakras
Totally.
and all that. And it's just not something I've done really a lot of. So say I came to you and I'm having relationship issues. Like I don't trust. Okay. Say I don't trust, that what I don't trust something good is going to last, or I don't trust, you know, myself or whatever. Say I have trust issues. I come to you about relationships. What would you do first?
I would ask your body if I can read your energy.
Okay. And
And
how,
this is usually when the client answers, and I go, I'm not talking to you. I want to talk to your body.
okay.
So then I go in and I say, is there a true cause that she has trust issues? And I'll get, yes. Can I find it? Yes or no?
And so the person I would actually be answering you, or
No.
how do you read this then?
I
How
just
do
say
you,
you just sit quiet. I don't know how I know how to do it. I can just see
okay,
things like just I've taken a few courses on emotion and about going in and just one of them was quantum energetics where they give you all these questions and you have to choose the right answer. And he was showing me how to do it. He was trained in Mexico, I think, but he had his associate there reading my energies. How many past lives have you had? I think I got 36 and she went 37. So some of this I just had. So congratulations, I've got this amazing skill. I didn't give it to me. I was born with it. So I want to make sure that, not that I stay humble, but I put it in context. I've just
uh-huh.
honed it.
So it's almost like it sounds to me almost like some like if I'm doing say a mediumship, right? And I hear what I get is like there's not somebody talking. I don't necessarily hear words, but I will
Get an
like
impression.
I will get something like a blue work shirt with a name tag, or I see a car and it's like a 1950 Ford, or I mean, like I'll get stuff like that, and then check it out with my client. Does this fit for who you're? Is it like that? Is it like I just get information? I might get a number, I might get a name, I might get.
So I
So
don't
is
get
that
it.
how it
Like,
comes to you?
so when I work with people, most often it's an emotional problem and it's connected to it's emotional or spiritual, but it's connected to somebody in their past or it's connected to something that's happened to them or an ancestor or there's usually something that involves another person.
Okay.
And because I can go in and read the energy field, I don't ask those questions. I don't look for those types of answers. So my
Yeah, but I
third
mean, when you
question,
get the answers, is it like you say, it's an
I
impression?
just feel it right here.
Okay.
So I get yes or no. I work with yes and no's.
Okay.
So I will go. So my third question to you would be, is this trust issue even yours or is it somebody else's? Because you'd be surprised how many people carry other people's energy in their lives. You think of our auras always touching.
Yes.
So sometimes I'll go in and say, where did this come from? Is it yours? And I'm going to use an example. I had two women come over one night, and there's supposed to be a group, and I can't remember if there was snow or whatever. So only two showed up. So I said, well, why don't I just work on both of you? And they both wanted to work on abundance blocks. So I went through and I did my checking out for the first one. So then I did the second one because I didn't want the one to sit there bored. So then I went in and I started looking at where the first one had her abundance blocks. Well, the second one's listening to me and does not want to tell me about this because she's listening to the questions I'm asking the first person. So then I go in, I said, can I read your energy? And she goes, yeah. And I go, you just lied to me. You don't want me reading your energy. I go, let's have a glass of wine. Let's just forget all this. She didn't want to do it in front of her friend either. But she
Oh,
said, yeah, so this is part of the discernment and knowing that you have the right to say no and boundary issues. I'm not sure if this is really what I want. It's all she would have had to say, but
yeah.
she insisted on going through. So then I go and ask her body again, can I read your energy? And I go, you keep saying no, you don't want me in there. I don't have permission to go in. Like your body's telling me no. She goes, no, I want you to do it because she didn't want to look like she was hiding.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to use this as an example. So I can't remember. Her problems were she had pain in her hips. She couldn't walk. So moving forward.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
said, is there a true cause for this? Yes. And we went through and I just started asking questions. And I said, who betrayed you? Your mother? No. Your father? No. Your brother? No. Your sister? I go, your sister betrayed you. Well, because she didn't want to do this. She looks at me, she goes, I don't have a sister. I go, you don't have to do this. Like she was you're wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
So by
But
then I'm getting a little bored and a little
you're like,
whatever.
I'm done. Yeah.
So I looked at her, I said, is there a secondary cause that your hips aren't moving? And I said, yes. I go, mother, father, brother, sister, your husband. She goes, so she didn't want to talk about her husband in front of her friend. She goes, well, I kind of had a sister once. She was my best friend, but she burned me. She threw me under the bus.
Oh, duh.
So I would never have guessed that. I'm asking her body the questions, and her
Mhm.
body is responding. She's doing it verbally, but she's remembering or whatever. She's making the connection there. So, anyways, let's clear it. So then I use magnetic energies and clear this, and just we start just get this out of here. She had no business betraying you, and I really helped them process the emotion at the time, almost like the Wernicke codes, where you say back to the person what they were told. So if she said, you're ugly, she had no business saying you're ugly. And I would just reverse that energy. Well, you know what she does? She gets up, walks around the coffee table, walks in front of it, wiggles her butt, and goes, son of a, she unlocked it. So
Yes.
she's got
Yeah.
problems in her hips. So it didn't solve everything, but she had never got rid of that event in her body.
Interesting.
So this is how I do it. But I would go in with you and I would say, is this even yours? And so let's say you had a parent who had trust issues.
Hmm.
So I'm going to use
This
another
is
example.
interesting because it's just like this actually, as you're speaking, my brain came up with an answer. That's interesting.
So you have your
Yeah.
answers. And this is how I empower my people when I work with them, my clients.
Mm.
Because when they walk out, they can say good things about me, they can write testimonials, but I go, no, you did the work. I just helped you. I just facilitated. Now you can fly on your own. You need me again, you know where I am. So this
And
is the idea that because as a society, we've been so knocked down, you help invert the energies instead of the inverted energies down. We're in a death spiral, it seems. Who can race to the bottom the quickest for what they're encouraging us to do it in mainstream, what have you. So I try to spin that energy up and help them build up their confidence. So in an example of that, so we only did, that was it. We didn't do any more. It's like, let's get a glass of wine. I'm done. Like,
yeah, yeah.
I don't want to do anymore. And it was supposed to be a social evening in the first place, right? I wasn't supposed to be
Oh,
doing that. But then what I would do is I go in and I ask if they have ego blocks. So a lot of my material is proprietary and I've got writing all over it. But I go through and I check out all the ego blocks. So
okay.
these examples are self-doubt. Do you doubt yourself? No. I'm going to do you right now. Do I have permission to read? Yes. You're curious. You
Is my
criticize
body
yourself?
saying yes or no? Yes, go ahead.
I already got the yes. I get it out of the thymus, right? Do you criticize yourself? Not really. Do you blame yourself? Do you have a false sense of pride? Do you have shame? Guilt? Defensiveness is yours. So we're not going to clear it, but there's something that comes up that makes you as defensive as can be.
You
We're
should,
not going to clear it. Does that make sense to you?
um, well, I don't know
I
if I
can think
have
of
an,
two people
yeah,
that you have defensiveness. One is related to you because she's pulling some stunts on you. You're defensive. You're defensive with and so I'm not saying it's not justified, but you don't have to be on defensive. And there's another person in there that you're defensive with because you don't like that person's choices
mm,
if they affect you. So do you notice there's no shame in anything that I'm doing?
yeah,
There's no shame. There's nothing to
yeah.
be ashamed of. You're carrying crap you don't need to carry. So with the one, it's you're defensive because you didn't know how to stand up against her. You know exactly who I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other
Uh,
one, there's unresolved business there. I don't know what that means. But I'm not going to go into it. I'm just going to use this as an example of how I go in, but I don't know. I can say what the issue is, but I can't say, well, on January 3rd, 1975, years, like I can't do things like that.
exactly. That was it. No.
So I don't do things along that line, but I just go
Yeah.
in and read this. So basically I don't know if you call it psychic. It can be psychic surgery sometimes, but it's like remote clearing. You just go in and say, what are you hanging on to? Is this yours? And it's the questions because as we raise our consciousness, the collective consciousness is raising as well.
Hmm.
And I always say there's three types of hats: white hats, black hats, and ass hats. Some of the ass hats don't want the masses to raise in consciousness because they're in competition, even though they have nothing to do with you.
Right.
They don't want to see people get ahead of them. But as that consciousness raises, their fear and anxiety about, oh my God, I got to stay in control can still affect the empath. You're obviously an empath because it's the empaths who are absorbing that energy from others. So if we don't know how to own what is ours, is this mine? Is this somebody else's? If we
And
don't
have
know how to
boundaries.
separate or right? But
Yeah.
even so, we're not on 24/7. So an example, I can think of the one that I went for a walk and I walk at a brisk pace, and an hour into the walk, and I'm still just I'm just hyped up on anxiety, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm clearing as I'm walking and nothing's working, and I'm like, I never thought to ask, and I go, is this anxiety mine? I got 66% wasn't mine. So I'm not going to
Interesting.
sit there and try to clear out 66% of something that doesn't even belong to me. It's just get rid of it. So then I said, what's the problem? And I'm concerned about not enough food, not enough water. Went to the stores and guess what? That was a morning I'll never get back because I wasted it, but I did learn from it that if something's not clearing and you're pretty good at what you do, and if something's not giving, you're missing something.
Hmm.
So that's when I learned. So sometimes I'll go on the back deck and I go, do I have anything to be worried about here? Nope. Why? Because nobody's awake around me. They're all sleeping. So I just need to know not to talk about anything and put me on anybody's radar. I just do 3D bill, right?
Yes,
Just
sometimes
talk.
3D Bill is, since we, it is our primary mm, input with our active senses that, and I was talking to you off camera that last night I just needed to 3D Bill myself dumb down. And I
Totally.
just needed to not think, not to just go, oh, okay, and
Right.
just let go, and in a way letting go of the control, and thereby allowing my energy to ramp back up. Because, like, I think people like you and I, we have that curiosity quotient that you were mentioning about, like, we're almost always on when
Want to
it
know why?
comes to reaching, understanding, and helping others. And so sometimes that 3D-ville where you just go, oh, look at the birds. Isn't the
Totally.
sky nice? This show is really entertaining. Like, oh,
And we
what's he gonna
have
do
to.
next? And just not really think about things.
So we have an imbalance sometimes within our own energy field, and this is no judgment against us, but we are so involved and enjoy what we're doing that we go too far in one area, whether it's spiritual development. Then it's like go have a bath, go for a walk, go draw a picture, do some artwork, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, but we have to know when we're no longer helping ourselves, when we're so far into that energy. And even though some people might think I'm describing a manic state, no, not at all. We're just very focused on what's happening, but we have to realize we have to balance out the recreation, balance out relationships, nature, what we like to do for our own hobbies and interests, friends,
Mhm.
family, whatever it is, right? So we have to balance all of that out. And sometimes it doesn't take long. Sometimes it can be a couple days. I use certain oracle decks, and the one card I hate the most, patience isn't my strong suit. When it says you're way ahead of yourself in your spiritual growth, you might be 10 hours, 10 days, 10 weeks, 10 months, or 10 years ahead of yourself. And I'm like, I'm not waiting 10 years. Like, you know what I mean? Because we're seeing that we're ascending and we know energies are changing around us and we're open to different things happening. But what it meant was other people might not be ready. So that's why when I talk about the chakras, I just work with the basic 7 because
Yeah.
people have to start at one thing at a time. So then I talk about one chakra, the qualities, how it affects us emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, and then I go into the next one. But we all have to start somewhere within any of this work. But what I did was I kept good documents for myself when I started learning all this. And I would say, how can I explain that real easy? So people can get it, because people can look at a lot of the things I do and they go, that makes so much sense. You know what so we're learning differently. So I think you're a frontier forerunner. I'm somewhat of a forerunner, that we're going in looking at it. I come out and I write things down.
Yeah.
And so I can explain what emotional intelligence is. Then I go and I look online and I think, I don't think those people have it right, but who cares? That's whatever that industry is, how whoever's explaining it, but I explain it my way. And I let the individual decide which one makes sense and how
Yeah.
they explain it, right? And this is the one we've talked about, the inverted energies.
Yeah. Talk about that a little more.
So what has happened when 2015 they were introducing the sex ed curriculum in Ontario here, and our premier was Kathleen, but she identified as a L word.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
So no, okay, so this is Sandy's interpretation. I look at her husband, Jane. Jane could give Floppy Mike a run for his money. I swear to God, that woman's having normal sex. She's just saying she's not.
Okay. Her
The,
husband, Jane. All right.
her husband, Jane. So masculine and feminine energy. So I think Jane is like Floppy Mike. You know what I'm saying? But she's having a hetero, and
I'm
they're
good.
having. Does that make sense? So,
No,
anyways,
no. Obviously, it sounds absurd. Not
so
you,
so my
but
point is,
the
I look at for the
situation. Yeah.
deceptions. I look for the deceptions.
Yeah.
So I'm at the rally, and there's a reverend there who's a MPP, so she's a member of parliament. She's a reverend, and she's also identifies that way. And she brought 2 drag queens, the story hour people in. She brought 2 of them in. The one was called Twisted Fister. all this just to annoy the people. Like it's all about tormenting the parents. And when I saw her the first time she came in, she was holding the flag like this. And then I
Okay.
watched her part way through pull the magician's trick and hold it like that. And that's when I knew, because I'd already been looking at the chakras and things like that. And I'm like, she just inverted the chakra system. So then I started looking. So I watched her do it in real time. There are a lot of deceptions going on around here.
And symbolism,
It's all
sub
the symbolism.
subconscious symbolism and training.
So, and that's how we're trained with light and color. So you look at a stoplight, it's red, yellow, green.
Yeah.
Based on the chakras, it should be red, yellow, green.
Mm-hmm.
So all this is an energetic deception. So that's why I make sure that I have a certain understanding of things, because when I go in and I want to read something in somebody, I want to know, is it a perception they have? Is it a belief they have? Is it somebody else's energy? Is it something that they're ashamed to let go of? I worked with a woman. She, her daughter was having a baby, and her and her husband had divorced years before, but she hadn't seen him in all these years. And she was embarrassed about seeing him. She didn't want to make a fool of herself. And I think it was probably the fourth session in. Like, I don't go in and just rip out the emotional guts out of people. But the fourth session I went in and I said, tell me about how you and your husband split up. Tell me what you think. Tell me about your husband. She was like, he was just a weenie. She goes, he wasn't a very strong man. But she's telling me that he left her, all this kind of stuff, that she's the victim. Okay. I don't care what the answer is. I'm just looking for the truth. So anyway, so she's telling me he was a real weenie and she really didn't care for him that much. And I looked at her and I said, your husband didn't, because he went and found somebody else, because males need that energy usually right after a separation.
Yeah, very quickly. Yeah.
Right. So, and there's a reason for that, which is another story maybe. So anyways, I went in and I said, your husband didn't leave you. I said, you cut him off. So he had to leave because he needed that female connection. I go, you kicked him out. She looked at me, sat back in her chair and goes, my daughter always said I never tried hard. I go, you're the one who left the marriage. Like, don't worry about it. She goes, I couldn't have left because if I did, my church community would have ostracized me. So she denied him what he wanted in the marriage or what he was hoping to have. He leaves. She labels him public, you know what, number one, blames him. And it wasn't him.
That's kind of a side topic here, but that's really interesting. And I think it's, personality wise, that this often happens in marriages. It's a passive aggressive way of getting, addressing your needs. So whatever her reason was for withdrawing, like that, not being happy, she could not be assertive and say, I'm not happy. I want this to end and let's go our own ways. She couldn't be assertive. So she created the atmosphere that forced him to take action. And you know that usually, I think it's something like 90% or 80% of breakups are actually initiated by the women. The woman is usually the one who divorces the husband. Husbands, they want to be married. Because they're, and this is another thing, it's like a lot of times in our more stereotypical roles, they have been happy with the status quo. They're like, I'm fine, because traditionally, say, maybe generation ago, they could do, they had all the control, the money, they could do what they wanted to do while the wife was more the homebody. Now, I think that's probably going to be shifting. I'm interested to see what happens with the statistics on who divorces who as a new generation of study goes forward. But I just kind of have to throw that out there, that people will passive aggressively create a situation, even to get fired from a job, right? Like if they can't quit because they won't get unemployment or they would look like whatever. And so some people, you call it shooting yourself in the foot or whatever, but they purposely are trying to get out of something and will, create something to where the other party has to take the action.
So it's like a suicide by cop, you know what I mean? Like when some people, so that is one strategy. So with the work I do, what I've done as well is identified all the patterns that people are dealing with. So they might be dealing with religious patterns. They might be dealing with societal, cultural, educational. It could be, there's a reason they can't leave because, and I worked with a woman in finance. She would not divorce her husband. He was doing horrible things to her. She would not divorce him because she knew the church would ostracize her sons. And I realized one day she didn't ask me my opinion on staying. I kept going, why aren't you leaving? Why aren't you leaving? Right? She didn't ask my opinion on her choice. So it was a moment that I got to stand back and say, who do I think I am? And this is why, when they
Yeah.
talk about the Karens, I'm like, this has nothing to do with you. If I, so we need to start identifying these boundaries more. So once I realized that I had no business telling her what to do,
Yeah.
she had her own business. So he would come in and just raid money out of the till. So I just told her what I thought she should do. And I said, you tell one son where all this is. And because she didn't care if she lost the house, she was not going to hurt her children. I don't get to tell her what her priorities are.
Yeah.
So I told her what to do, and she saved up enough that she would have first and last wherever she went. He ended up leaving the country and going back to his home country. So then after a certain period of time, she couldn't leave him because he had abandoned her. But her priest was buying her family Christmas gifts. Her priest wanted her to stay. Who do I get to say to a priest that he's doing right or wrong? I don't get to say that, whether my opinion isn't what she wanted. She wanted my advice. How do I do this? So this is part of keeping boundaries straight with the work I do as well. So when I go in and I ask, I don't care what the outcome is. I just know that person will know the answer. So in this example, look at all the programming. We are taught that each individual affects the macro. No, the macro also affects the micro.
Yeah.
When you look at structures in a society, expectations. Oh, now look who's you have to be a certain orientation right now. What asshole came up with that? You know what I mean? But people are afraid to ask those questions and just say, no, you have a 1, which is a phallus, or a womb, which is a 0. Same as computer coding. It's 1 or zeros. That's it. You can sit here and tell me orange is purple if you want, but it doesn't mean it's true. So this is where we're not standing up for ourselves in a way that we look at what other people are doing or saying. But so what this is so important, once I start going through and clearing out all of these blocks, then I look and see where's their soul. Is there soul in there? Because if they've experienced pain or betrayal, often they kick the soul out so the soul doesn't feel the pain.
Yeah.
And then I have to ask it, did you send it away or did it go on its own? Where is it? So it's just, so there's an interesting, so basically I'm taking all the fragments from people and bringing them back in, helping that person get whole and feel really good about themselves again. Right. And then they can start flying. So you're talking about, it's going to be interesting seeing the divorces going forward. There's not going to be marriages going forward. Men are so afraid of women. And when it comes to those statistics.
Oh, those terrible toxic men is what they're afraid of being. They're getting labeled.
So, but they don't know how to stand up for themselves. So a lot of the work I do, I know this is the same graphic as I use the same graphic. I might have to change that, but I also do one on masculine and feminine energy.
Oh, interesting.
So what I do is I look at the higher masculine traits, and I've listed a number of them. I could go on forever, and then I look at the higher feminine traits, and then I look at the shadow masculine and the shadow feminine traits over here. And I get people to look at this, but I get them to assess for themselves where they are, so they can tell me or not the 3 they choose for the masculine, because we're all male and female energy, but we're all taught to separate ourselves like everything else. So instead of, when's the last time you hear women say what is great about men, or men say what they like about women? We don't work that way. It's always we're looking for what's wrong. Mental health has DMS-5. 2,700 mental illnesses. What are the chances they're going to find something right with somebody if they're only looking for what's wrong? It's the same in relationships. It's the same as the doctor. You go in and say, doctor, I've got this. Oh, you must have, and there's something wrong with you. How much of that is shaping us? But it works the same way with relationships. So I'm just going to read this, the shadow side of the feminine.
Okay.
Controlling, insecure, passive aggressive, belittling, bitchy, timid, manipulative, naive, gullible, erratic, conforming, illogical, confused, enabling, powerless, crazy, and denying.
I think I've experienced all of those personally.
Right. So, and this is no judgment. So where I want to go with this, I want to look at the macro that's creating all these programs. That describes our society, your country or mine right now. Belittling, bitchy, all these Karens pointing fingers, how naive and gullible. Oh no, certain things are good for little kids. Really? You know what I mean? Like
that's interesting.
So I look at macro and micro because I think our environment shapes us to a certain degree, but the people who want to cause us ill will, they are controlling those mechanisms. And then you get a professor in a university who's not going to give up tenure. So they're going to go along with the same nonsense
Yeah.
term after term, because they don't want to give up their pension, they don't want to give up their status, but
Yeah.
that person is causing harm if it's in the social study. Look at this, you've got an implant back there, my friend. So, but that person can be causing harm if they're promoting all of this. Implants can be thoughts, all kinds of things, right?
Uh,
But that professor can be causing harm by promoting things that cause little kids to want to mutilate themselves. But
isn't
we're
that
not
sad?
looking, not looking at the whole, the macro as the raindrops fall from the top to the middle ground. So I was with somebody this morning and I made a comment about the dangers in the middle ground. And he goes, oh yeah, he goes, you get the top 10 going one way, good or bad, you're going to get the majority of them going. If you get them going bad, they're going bad. This is where we are now. He goes, but if you get them going good, you're going to
Yeah.
find people swing toward the good.
Yes.
Interesting.
And I don't know if you and I had that conversation. This would have been about a year ago, um, about what something that got criticized by the masses was the idea of mass formation
Yes.
psychosis. And there was a guy, a learned man who studies human behavior, and that's what he's well known for. He didn't just pop out of a tuna can and come up with some theory, but he was interviewed on a popular podcast or something, and then this term or this idea was used about this mass formation. Another word that I like for it, I think because it just is a little more metaphysical, is the egregore. And egregore is a group think, an energetic entity that
Yes.
has a life of its own, but it expresses itself through people. It expresses itself through a group. So when you talk about that middle third, what it was is that you can pretty much divide society, humanity, into thirds when it comes to this, the way they think. There are the ones who have discernment, the ones who take in the information, decide, and will be resistant to the suggestions, the very strong suggestions across media, across whoever, church, government, whatever, these groups that will put information out there, university. Then there's the top third or bottom third, whatever you want to call it. There's a third that just will go with the trend, what we were just talking about on your show. Will just go with the trend, and that is their identity for the moment. Like, oh, you said so, eye in the sky or whoever. I believe I'm going with it. Think Jim Jones and a little Kool-Aid there, right? The Kool-Aid drinkers, or is it the blue pill? I think it's, anyway. I always get those pill colors mixed up, but
The
so
red one's the wake up.
I just take them both, so I stay neutral. Then there's the middle ground, who don't want to make waves. They don't want to stand out. They just want to go along to get along. And this is where the societal power comes from, because they'll go with the loudest voice, they'll go with the strongest message and just say, okay. Whereas that one third that just stands by their guns, says, no, this isn't right. I'm feeling no, big N for no, this is not right for me. They've done their discerning, they know their values, they have their moral standards or whatever it would be that keeps them from jumping on the trending bandwagon. And it's, I want to say, it's a fact. It's true. It's proven over history. And we have so many examples of it, of heinous things that people will do en masse that they would never have done it just on their own. Whereas there are some people that would not do it in a group and they would never do it on their own. But then there's the 2/3 that
And where do those
yeah,
2/3 work? In
a lot.
positions of power and in the
Yeah.
system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's
So
true. What
that
you're just
tells
saying
us.
is, yeah.
Can I'm going to introduce just something here from the work I'm doing. When you talk about that mass, what do you call it? Mass formation,
Um,
mass.
Mass formation psychosis, I think it is, or
Okay.
basically it's like group, you know,
Group think.
uh,
Okay. So energetically, I work with energies. How did all these people play the same games? And I can't remember if I mentioned it to you, but I did a video on spotting imposters, and I don't know how long it was, but I just played all the games they play, because it doesn't matter if you're at the top, you're at the middle, or you're at the bottom. The games are the same. So one might be like we talked about, the conversation where you say something on somebody's thread, and the three-letter agencies are all over the social media platforms, and
Yeah.
somebody takes something you say and leads it a certain way. You come back with an answer, then they take that one and they kick it down the road to distract, distract, distract. They all do it. It doesn't matter if it's a bot on a social media program, or if it's somebody, let's say in an education facility, and they want the student to learn something a certain way. You didn't think outside. You're not disagreeing with me, are you? And they try to manipulate, and in that case, draw that person in. All of these games are the same, which implies what you're calling, I can't remember if you said hive mind psychosis, if that,
That's close enough. Hive mind is like group,
right.
I've forgotten the word, but it's
Mass
almost like a
formation.
mass formation psychosis, where
Okay,
it's
so
like everybody goes crazy because the other guy's going crazy. But a mass formation, if we just say mass formation, group thought, hive mind.
So I want to talk hive mind, because I'm
Yeah.
coming at this from a different area. And the two things that they're annoyed with right now. So think of the concept of Christ. They hated him. Why? Because he had a pure heart. Whether you believe he was real or not, the concept is he was your genuine Christed consciousness. That third that you're talking about, who's hated, they're
Yeah.
hated because they know who the light is. So what I see is the darkness. How far will somebody go to knock somebody down, turn another way, snicker when they're getting hurt, not get involved? So what these people lack is lack of heart. So they're all fascinated with their mind. They all flirt with the left hemisphere of their mind, which is the logical side of the mind. People say emotions are across the front, not with the exercises I do. So I find the left brain is that logical brain, but it's garbage in, garbage out in some cases. The intuition's on the right side. So if I have a client who's very emotional, I have them tap on their left temple, or like that eminence.
Uh-huh.
I have them tap there. They can pull themselves out of their emotion into their logic if they're having trouble getting into their. So I don't believe anything anybody in a lab coat says, with the number of things that have gone wrong. I don't care if it's a mental health lab coat. I don't care what it is. Sorry, nobody's more qualified to be me than me, you than
That's
you.
right. Yeah.
So priorities are missing.
Yeah.
Priorities are missing.
And again, there's that group thing where, and yeah, might go into something a little sensitive, but the whole idea of group thing, that the group says that you need a certain substance in your body because the group thinks so. And when denying that individual like sense of what's right for me and my health, and also as long as it's not harming others, so what
but now
harm is
everybody's
there?
an expert. They get to tell you that you have to do it for everybody's safety. What?
Yeah. And
so that shame, which we've talked about the shame in different ones, which is the lowest form of energy here. They want you in shame. Shame registers at 20. You're not doing the right thing for humanity. Guilt at 30. Physical death at 25. So when people start shaming somebody, they're wishing death on you. And this is what we live in a society that nobody wants to understand the energy or take responsibility for their behaviors. But that could be a psychic attack, wishing a psychic attack on somebody. And the next thing you know, they're sick. Yeah. Because they're wishing something low on them. So people don't understand the power of our minds. Are you familiar with the German New Medicine? It's all about the consciousness. So a friend of mine is starting to teach it. I don't know if I'm going to take it from her or just do my own research on it. But everything that we know is not what we think. So again, going back to what I do, when I go in and I read the body, that person knows. They just don't know they know.
Right. We all know.
We all know, but we don't know questions to ask. So my answers.
Yeah, exactly. What you're doing has somebody wake up there.
Totally.
That connection and go, oh, I just realized, like they know, they feel it. And this is where I think it's really interesting, is that tie between energy, subconscious, because as a hypnotherapist, I'm always like, there's something going on, right? So the energy, the subconscious, and the physical, manifestation of this information that somebody isn't always aware of. and
Totally.
and how you can help them become aware, or how, like hypnosis, energy work, these intuitive questions that you get and you can tie in and help
So
them. Yeah.
you go by the term hypnotherapist.
Yes.
I look at you and I see Desiree,
Mm.
because you're more than a hypnotherapist. You've opened yourself up to see different possibilities of how you can intuit and get your answers.
Yes, I do
So
that.
you just have a different bag of tricks than me. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing, nothing wrong with what I'm doing. But and I know you're going by what the process is in that one. So look at that as an 8.5 by 11. That's just one field of knowledge
Right.
that you have, but your skills have come from so many other things that you can do. Like bending a spoon, that came from your heart, but you're curious about it, right?
Yeah,
But
I was curious and that led me to it. And you're right. And I think that's one of the benefits with my work is because I am curious. Like you, I've studied lots of different modalities and then I do use them all together. But because not like, yay, Desiree, scratch my thing, yay, Desiree. I am intuitive and I have learned to embrace that, express it, and say, guess what? I do intuitive work, so even if I have someone here for hypnotherapy, there's a lot of intuitive work that goes in. When I'm doing their interview, and like you talk about reading body language or asking the right questions, or even if I had someone contact me recently, said that they wanted to stop drinking. And then on the phone conversation, I'm like, okay, so, let's just get a few details before you come in. Um, I, I knew that it wasn't about finally when I said, you know what, I don't think, because I could go in and do hypnosis geared
right.
at the drinking behavior.
So they gave
And
you a safe problem.
that's where we go to the behavior. Or I said, I think you would benefit because just in talking, there's this and there's this and there's this and there's anxiety and there's this and there's fear and I said, I don't think drinking is your problem. I think drinking is a symptom of
A
a
solution to
different problem, and of course, usually it is. Any substance overuse would be, but I said, let's go in with the hypnosis and go to the source of why
exactly.
you want to. And it was not even about it was anyway. But I won't go into more detail than that. But it was like any somebody else straight cookie, like might have said, okay, had them come in, not found out more, not have had that like the higher or deeper understanding of what's going on and a sense of no, this is not your, would have just said, okay, well, we're going to make you, want to throw up whenever you drink. Okay, great.
Wow.
But that would have, they would have found another, who knows
Way to
what,
do it.
right?
So
Yeah.
that's really interesting. So when you say you go in and because it's always the underlying issues, is there a true cause for that? So that's what I would be
Just like,
asking.
yeah, like you're saying.
Exactly what you just said, right? We're saying the same things. I think just
Mhm.
wording it differently, and we come from
Yeah.
different schools of thought or trains of thought, right? But
Yes.
it's interesting when you're talking about what you do with going in with hypnosis, because there's some things I think that people do need to go under to find it. I've had only maybe 2 clients that I worked with that absolutely balked at going in and doing the inner work. And one, she turned beet red and flushed, and I was starting to bring her, like, take her down and, down in numbers. And as soon as I saw that, I brought her right back up. So it's no different than doing like a past life regression, like when you go down the stairs or whatever, right? But she would not go inside and do
Yeah.
that work. But she seemed to have her act together. So in the social whatever, right? Beautiful
Yes.
woman, but she was just terrified of going in. So what has happened to some people, and they might not remember, it could be past life, it could be something that was generational that handed down that she wasn't even there for, but it's in her cellular body. So
Yeah.
there's so much. So you're asking, like, you're like, I see you so much more than a hypnotherapist, and there's nothing wrong. I'm not putting down hypnotherapy, anything like that.
It's
I'm
just,
not.
one of the
I see
tools.
you're one of the more effective ones. I think I sent you that sheet that said hypnotherapy is the most effective out of behavioral and
Yes. Thank
psychoanalysis.
you. Yeah.
Yes. So I sent you that because that dated it back in 2007
Yeah.
is when
And
that study was. I'm not sure if you found it or not, but so there's
I
a
did.
lot of ways. And you know what I find? No one person is going to fix when I say the word fix, that's maybe not the right word, remove, clear everything and everybody. Like I've gone to different practitioners for different things.
Mhm.
And if you've got something that's stuck spiritually in one of your chakras, maybe you need somebody who can go in and clear it out etherically. But if you've got something that's physical, that's stuck in your body, that's not, like maybe something isn't working properly, well, maybe you need to go to somebody who works on the physical body that can help you alleviate that.
Right.
So
Yeah,
not one person does everything, in my opinion, in my
and
experience.
absolutely, it's just like you need a balanced diet, you know. Um,
Good analogy.
you might have your certain foods that actually are really the best for you, but you still need like a little protein here, and you need a little whatever. So I do think, and you know, circling back to the whole thing about trending, you know, it's not always one answer, and
No, it's not.
discerning and getting to know yourself and saying, you know, we have multiple values, not just one value, and we might
Totally.
focus on one at a time a little more than the others, but that doesn't mean dump all the others and say, well, I used to believe this, but that's out the window. It's like, well, why did I believe that, and how much of that is still true and still valuable?
The
um,
idea, though, that you're putting your attention, your awareness on your values and you're exploring the concept is where the growth starts to happen for everybody. It's
mhm.
about placing your awareness on those things. But we've been taught sex, drugs, and rock and roll. We've been taught all kinds of things, entertainment industry, sports. People aren't taught, how can I be my best version of myself? When do you hear anybody being taught that in school? They say, oh, become a lawyer, become a doctor. It's always about a
Yeah.
material thing. What is your best version of yourself? And that's what I'm trying to help people bring out in themselves so that they can be the person they want to be. And going back to people who have stuff inside them that they don't know. So, one man asked, he came in quite a few times. And then the one time he finally had the courage. And I said, what are we working on today? He goes, I don't trust women. And he kind of goes like this. And I go, you're not going to offend me. Like, don't worry about it. Right. So is there a true cause? Yes. I go in. It turns out it was 3 generations before. It was between his grandmother and his grandfather. And so there was a couple, the grandfather and the great uncle really liked this girl. And one of them, they decided the grandfather was going to marry her, wrote her love letter. She gets off the train and looks at him and goes, oh, I thought you were the other brother. Married him anyways out of shame.
Oh dear.
So then when he died, like, so this is what can be buried in people's psyche. So this guy thinks he doesn't trust women. He's carrying the burden 2 generations later. So they didn't have a great marriage. He dies after whatever. They have 3 children. And he remembers his grandma, Paulina. So I said, who doesn't trust women? I go, is it your dad? No, your mom? Yeah, your mom's father. I go, it's your mom's mother. Who is that? He goes, Grandma Paulina. And then he tells me the story. I gave you the Coles Note version. So he tells me, and he remembers when his grandfather died, his grandmother Paulina came to his mother's house, and he remembers her sitting there with the 3 daughters and going, whatever you do, when I die, you do not bury me beside that man. Well, it was a
Oh
good
gosh.
Catholic family. Guess what the girls did? Her soul wouldn't leave. She popped right into the room when that happened, and we're both like, whoa, she wouldn't come near me. Guess why? Because she didn't trust women.
Wow.
So then he says to me, he goes, is she in my house? And I go, no. I go, she's in your shop. You have a shop? And he goes, yeah. He goes, you wouldn't believe things fly off the shelves all the time. I go, she wants your attention. So he does enough energy work as well. But we don't want to have mechanics car syndrome. Sometimes you get somebody else in who knows the work, who comes at it from a different angle. And I said, you got to talk to her. And he goes, I'm going to tell her I'm going to show her how to pass, how to cross. So, and he did. So there's things that people carry. I never know what I'm going to find.
That's really fascinating.
So why
Yeah.
aren't more of us learning how to do this? This is what, and one of my coaching, I have 3 levels of coaching. The one I'm starting to show people how to read this. So just with finishing the one course I took, his assistant, we started practicing. So she'd call me and say, okay, give me 3 things to work on. And then so I give her my 3 things. I said, what are your 3 things to work on? We'd get off the phone. I would just sit here and I'd be thinking about her. Is there a true cause for these things? And I would go through and we get back on the phone after 45 minutes and say, this is what I found here. This is what I found here. So the one time she calls me and she goes, I'm flying to Europe. She goes, I've got such a sinus headache. Can you go in and check and see if there's a real cause for this? I go,
Mm.
yep, okay. So I go in and I'm like, whoa, somebody over here hates your guts. So I call her back and I go, two things are happening. I go, there's a woman on this side of the pond who hates your guts. She's older. She doesn't want you to go and have a good time. Do you know who that is? And she went, oh yeah. I don't care. I'm not in the drama. I don't need to go and spread the gossip. Like, you know what I mean? This is
Yeah.
who's sending you psychic stuff and a headache. And I go, now the other person who's doing it is on the other side of the pond. She loves you dearly. And I said, I really want to stress that. She loves you. She doesn't want you to come because you're going to see things she doesn't want you to see. I go, do you know who that is? Turns out that was her mother. They were having financial problems, but didn't want to burden her. So she
Oh,
was sending her psychic stuff, not to hurt her, but just like,
yeah.
right?
Defensive, like, oh, embarrassment. Don't come.
No,
Yeah.
yeah. So not everything. I don't put attachment to it. So
Yeah.
so the one was mean, one was loving. Doesn't matter. You're both getting that energy, but then we could clear it. And she went and had a great time with her parents.
That's good.
So this is the stuff that people don't see that's possible, right?
Mhm. Yeah. It's I went to somebody once. I forgot the situation. It was many years ago. And with what you're talking about doing, I know you said you also sometimes use your rods, dowsing. So this lady, she was Russian, and her husband had to translate what
Okay.
she was saying. And I was actually doing a little bit of like coaching, business coaching with him so many years ago, and this was his wife who did this. And so she did an energy thing on me. And I've never used the rods. I my dowsing I've done with pendulums or physical body,
Yeah.
hands, that sort of thing. So I haven't used the rods just because I don't own them. I'm sure I'd be walking around with rods all the time if I did.
And not everything works for everybody either.
Yeah,
I have a pendulum that lies to me. It's quartz. And I have to
I
ask
have
it, are you telling me the truth? And sometimes it says
I
no.
do. Yeah, I have different pendulums. Some are very active and responsive. Like it'll just start going, and others just go, I don't think so.
I
But
know.
and so some it depends. So I test them out, beforehand. What I just think they're beautiful anyway. But I ask them, you want to work with me, and it's like, yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, so she did these rods, right? And I had a car got rear-ended several years ago, and it's left this permanent knot right there, always there. But what's interesting is she came and she's like, ooh, and then they cross or whatever. But she's told me she didn't know where I have pain, right? So it's similar to, it reminds me of what you're talking about. And she said, you have there's a pain behind your right shoulder. I'm like, yeah. And I wasn't rubbing it or anything. And she says, it's your father-in-law. And I said, why would he want to give me pain? He wants your attention. And my father-in-law's passed on, obviously, years ago. And she goes, he wants to be acknowledged. He wants your attention. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm paying attention. Okay, you can go now. And beyond that, I still get the pain. You know, Otto's a pain in my back. I don't know why, but I was like, I thought you liked me. So anyway, so it's an interesting thing that someone would come up with this
So we can have a look at that and we'll do that privately. I don't do like, I don't want sessions where our energy's opened up that
yeah.
people can even access afterwards, right? But one of the women I worked with, I go, you got a pain, and I described, I go, right in the center of your back. And I go, what's that all about? And she goes, when I was a young girl, she goes, I was acting up in school and the teacher called the principal, and the principal came, grabbed me and threw me against the coat rack. But that
Wow.
etherically was still in her back. I'm not getting anything from your father-in-law. I'm not trying to go in. I don't want to go in right now, but
Okay. Yeah.
there's something there that's not what you think it is. And it doesn't mean it's not connected to him. Right.
Anyway, so
So
I just thought that was interesting. Yeah. And
yes,
then
even when we
my
go like
implants
this,
and my implants just been driving me crazy. No.
because we're talking and you're waking up, so your implant doesn't want you to wake up. You look at your occipital bones, that's where a lot of the thought forms, imprints, implants go in right in there. So I've taken crystals before, so it's not this one. I use my good crystals if I can't figure out why I did that. But I go in and I start pulling the energy out. But this woman started, she was screaming to the point I'm thinking my windows are open. My neighbors are going to think I'm killing somebody. But she said she had sorrow, but it turned out to be terror, is what was coming out of her mouth.
Yes.
And so when we pulled this stuff out, and I looked at her and I said, you said sorrow, but terror is what was, your voice was like you were in terror. She goes, I had a breakdown earlier in life. And she goes, they gave me a sheet of emotions and what they felt like because I couldn't feel my own emotions. So
Yeah.
you never know what you're going to get, right? But the idea is you help them relieve that. And the other thing for me, you don't have to tell me anything. It's not about me seeing it. It's about that person bringing the energy up in front of their eyes so they can see it when we release it.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes I'll stack them, and I'll use an example. One client, jealousy came up in her field, and I've been working with her for a while. And I go, jealousy. I go, that's weird. And I go, you're not a jealous person. And I go, who's jealous of you? Well, she goes, no, I don't want to go there. And sometimes you do kind of push yourself onto them. And I said, you've got people who are jealous of you. Who's jealous? She goes, I'm not going there. I go, you're beautiful now at your age. You would have been stunning as a teenager and as a girl. Who's jealous of you? And she goes, I really. And I go, first five are women. Who are they? And I go, your mother, no. And I go, your grandmother, yes. I go, who else? And she goes, my aunt. I go, that's two. Who else? And I go, school. I go, you had a teacher jealous of you? She nods. And I go, who else? She goes, couple students, couple of girls I went to school with. So we could stack all five of them in there, get rid of them all at once. So they call it stacking. I think when they use like Touch for Health, they try to stack up all the outages or energy outages and then
Yeah.
release it. So then we went through the men. I go, who are the men that are jealous in your life? She goes, I don't want to go there. And by then I just look at her and I go, family, no. I go, these are guys who asked you out because you were beautiful and they knew they didn't have a chance. And when you said no, they could go back and tell everybody what a B you are. And she just looked at me. I go, I'm getting five. Is there more? I go, think about who they are, clear them out. I didn't even need to know who they were, but she didn't want to, because we're taught, oh, people aren't jealous of me. You'd be surprised who's jealous
Yeah.
of you. But clearing out emotions, those emotions were put onto her by somebody else. They
Yeah.
were their nonsense, but she's carrying it in her energy field. So there's so much more we can do to release all this stuff. I think we're on the beginning edge of all of this, but it'd be nice to create generations of children who didn't need to get over their childhood.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding,
So
right?
that's the goal for
There's
me
always
is,
something. Yeah.
and they're not taught boundaries and they're taught, like you said, see something, say something. So what are kids taught? Don't let anybody hurt you. You let me know, but you better go kiss and hug grandma and auntie and grandpa goodbye and let
Right.
everybody, like they don't have their own
Yeah.
autonomy. They're not
It's like,
taught to have
it's like,
that.
yeah. Exactly. You have, oh, you can trust me, come and tell me anything, but be nice and go sit next to Uncle Jimmy or whatever. Oh, he's creepy, Mom. Be nice, you know?
It's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. So we live in a world of double standards and double speak. We say one thing and mean another. See
Yeah.
something, say something. Well, that's usually when you get yourself in trouble when you speak up.
Right. If you speak up and someone doesn't agree, instead of just saying, okay, your opinion, whatever, I personally love it. Right. Okay. You personally love it. But, there's certain standards, whatever. And as a society, yes, that whole pendulum just swings. And in some areas, it's starting to swing too far again, which then creates this, whole like thing.
It needs to snap back. It almost creates a vacuum in the middle. And I think this is where we're going to find people have, they're going to be pure hearted and they're going to come from a good place. And what we're missing, I think, for a lot of this, again, no fault of our own, is the language around the things we talk about. So we were talking about morality earlier, and I go and I start writing out what I think it is. I talk about what I think spirituality is, but I'm putting it in writing so that when people can look at it, they can see it from a different perspective, but it's no judgment. My work is non-political, non-religious, not non-gender specific, but there's two, innie and outie, male and female. That's it. All our energy systems are male or female. They'll teach us that in Chinese medicine, but not in North American medicine. All energy is male or female. It's electric or it's
Yeah.
magnetic. You need the static charge to get the magnetism moving. It works in physics. It works
Yeah.
in automation. The only people who it doesn't work for, supposedly, are humans.
Yeah. Well, you humans are creative. We got to give us that. Very creative. Um, and our bodies are electric. right?
Totally.
Obviously,
I
you
call it
know,
electromagnetic, but yeah,
yeah, but I mean, our systems are it,
totally.
we get transmitters and then it feeds down and we have to have the food for the fuel for the energy
Totally. And that's
for
why
everything to work. And our hearts are like this,
totally.
electromagnetic pump. And um so yes, and if you start throwing in too many of random nuts and bolts and other screws and stuff that don't belong there, it's
It's
gonna
going to mess it up,
it's
right?
gonna mess up the emotional
The
energetic.
organic, the organic human form, right? And we are the true intelligence. I always say we're IA. So they talk about AI. We're IA. We're intelligent already. Everything mimics us. Gates was
Yes,
just practicing on the computers, putting in a virus so that you have to buy his cure to fix the virus. Like it's just.
sounds familiar. Yeah,
So once
you
you
know what,
start to see
that's
this,
probably where that first idea came from.
that was a testing ground on the AI. So when you're operating off of Windows, what is it now?
Oh,
Windows
it's like
are
up to
the
11. Like it wants me to switch
so
to 11 or 12 or something. I'm like, no, thank you. No, thank you.
Windows. So he's got the windows on there. So you're seeing that. What do we know for our human cells? Our windows are the eyes to the soul. Or eyes are the windows to the soul. Sorry. So they've even hijacked the human consciousness.
And then here we are appreciating, and that's again, like it's not the whole. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but you discern. And and here we are. Without Zoom, we wouldn't be having this great conversation and sharing opinions with the world. And
Right. And I'm
yet,
not saying everything is bad, but maybe
right
whoever created this was well intended.
now, when you were talking about, I just like the little light bulb went off in my head, which is probably where a certain person whose initials are BG probably had this light bulb go off in his head about computer virus, and then then you can sell the the fix, right?
The anti, yes.
And now think of that globally. What kind of money could be made if somehow I had a virus and I could make money on selling the fix, and that light
And even
bulb was.
having it patented before you bring out the virus so you can make all
And
kinds of it. But this is not a conspiracy. Sorry, this is a
no,
conspiracy.
but it's I just never thought about the mirror of the computer to a global reality that we've just experienced. Um, that's very clever, and that particular person is what we would call not emotionally
A
no
P word.
EQ but IQ.
I
Um,
would call him a P word. So he doesn't have the EQ, but he's got an intention. And I'm not convinced he's behind it all. I don't think he's that smart
no, but I
myself.
think he's just
He's
part
a
of the
showman.
team. Yeah, and part of the team that this whole idea
Yes.
might have come up with, especially with the people that are interested in the mechanics and the transhumanism and all of that, to be thinking in terms of the machine
So,
and
I don't know
yeah,
what year it was. There's a clip of him with the CIA saying that they're going to create something that will take out the God spark out of, and he used a religious community across the pond. So he was saying basically we're going to stop the terrorism. But
yeah, I
Rudolf Steiner in 1918 said in 100 years, they're going to have that something that you would take medically that will take the soul, separate the soul from the human. That's what this is all about, because the soul is the consciousness that's connected to your higher heart, your one self, God self,
right.
your the whole vertical channel of being able to read the consciousness fields. So even looking at so when I'm looking at all these towers, I'm not mechanically inclined. I haven't been on planet Earth since I was the end of the 1700s. So I can look at my thermostat and it gives me a hard time, but I can do so many other things that just I blow my mind. But anything
Right.
mechanically inclined, I struggle with that kind of stuff. But because my mind works the way it is, well, if 1968, the Hong Kong flu was when they put those things up in the sky, the satellites that brought that
Interesting.
on, then why are all these towers going up all around here that are just a little higher than the buildings? So nothing is what it appears to be, because we should all be on the Wi-Fi before these towers. We were all doing fine on Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
But
and
now,
why isn't my phone working better if all these towers are doing something, right? It's like this is weird. I have no signal, and I'm hello tower.
question everything, right? So just questions. And this is where the curiosity potential comes in. And if you ask somebody who works for them, they aren't going to give you a straight answer because they're all compartmentalized. So we're going to figure this out, but I have a feeling we're going to figure this out with the combination of here and here.
Oh yeah,
I'll
because like you
explain
said,
something to you later privately that I'm
we
working with.
already know. We already know
Right?
the answer, and it's just a matter of like really often being quiet enough within yourself to hear it and to feel it. It's because I do feel, I believe, I feel when you listen to your body, you're going to know the truth. And I think people get, you were talking about the person who had terror and they thought it was sorrow. People don't understand how they're feeling. They can't put a word on it. But
Exactly.
if they go inside and start identifying, when I think of this, I feel this, and I know what this is. Like if they can say, I know when I've been terrified, what happens when I think of that? Oh, so that's terror. And I thought it was sorrow. Oh, why am I terrified? And this is where you can help people go in there. Um,
Right.
before we, start to wrap it up, I want to ask you to something when you were holding up those charts I thought was interesting. The chakras and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Those two together, I never really thought about it. Maslow, being a humanist and all, but I wonder if he was into chakras because um, looking at that chart, or at least the way it's portrayed there, the colors match the meanings or the base of the chakras. So the bottom color was red, and that's like safety. There it is, yeah. And those are the chakra colors there, and just
But what's missing on the
well,
chakra colors?
the purple, yeah,
And the indigo, your third eye
yeah,
and your spiritual connection.
yeah.
Maslow, when I created this graphic, the visual aid, wasn't aware at the time. Maslow supposedly was a Freemason. Doesn't that
Oh,
make sense?
that's
So this is when they
interesting.
separated state and church. So certain people got to look after your spiritual growth, but you still had to go through the middleman and pay 10%.
Right.
And whether people go to that venue or not, that's their business. I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying this is how it was created. But then you'd go to an indoctrination university where they would really flirt with your thinking and your ideologies, or what was acceptable thoughts. And because I'm always baffled by the way people, not everybody think, but they think because you have two opposing views that's your only options. I'm like, what do you mean? I have to think one or the other. I can't think something
Yeah,
in between.
yeah. And just
And
like we were talking about, it's like if you don't believe what I believe, then you must die. Yeah.
right. So one of
Yeah,
my friend's daughters was taking social justice. So I want to talk just a little bit on the
sure.
social programs and the humanities in the universities. She was taking social justice, and she called me one time and said, can I send you some of these what do you call them, excuse me, pronouns? She goes, they're teaching me stuff. She goes, can I send you this? Because we talk about all this kind of stuff whenever I went over for dinner. Her kids would come home because they like talking like the way I talk, right? So she sends it to me and she goes, what do you think? I don't look at things with normal eyes. I looked at it and I thought, and I looked through and I'm like Zer and Z, and I'm thinking Nazi Germany and all these
Yeah.
pronouns, right? Anyways, and I look through and I think, okay, who authored this? There's no author, there's no reference. So this is how our minds are manipulated. I look to see what professor assigned it. No professor. So nobody's going to be on the hook for these pronoun things that the students have to learn and get right, or they won't pass the examination.
And
So,
social justice. Okay.
so that's what my finding was for her. One, maybe find something different, find a different type of course. But I said, nobody's taking responsibility for this. So you guys are all getting programmed within your 4 years to accept all this nonsense, so that when you're mothers, you're going to think all of this is normal. When you're teachers, you're going to think all of it's normal. So it's not just the top and the end user who's the child who gets hurt. It's the whole way through the system. It's the okay, mental health. Who can tell you a girl can be a boy? You would call them for an anxiety issue if they're going to tell you, well, why don't you go get your privates chopped off? Like, it's insane how people are giving their power away. And I'm not saying there isn't good ones in that industry. I know one I can think of in particular. She does a lot of the energy work. I've learned a lot from her. but majority of them. So this is why we go inside and learn it for ourselves. And when that need to have somebody else tell us what it means to be human is minimized, and we're picking it up for ourselves because we know, no, it's our life view. Do we believe in God? Whatever that energy is. Do we believe in love? Can we define what love is? Do we believe, there's life after death? What's your life view? Those are the true questions. If people can't answer that, they shouldn't be telling you how to live your life.
And I think, when you're talking about, like, say, certain, sex change surgery, I think, even going back again to know thyself, it's not you humans, we are not our sex organs. There is right now so much focus being put on the external body. And if someone can just get inside, find their internal compass about, like, loving yourself, knowing yourself, being comfortable with yourself, it won't matter what body you're in.
And I think that's part of,
you'll be happier in whatever body you happen to be in without all that pain and suffering to go physically try to change things.
If you watch the body of a girl where she's had a double mastectomy and muscles from her arm put on as a penis that just flops like an elephant's nose because it can't maintain an erection, whoever did that to her should be in jail. So what I'm going to say, from what I find, again, emotional and spiritual energies, most people I work with, when they come in, two things come up, usually self-esteem. They don't know how to esteem themselves from within, and not worthy. They're not worthy. So you look at these children right now, they're getting indoctrinated. Their sexuality is not even on until they hit puberty. Yeah. And they're doing it at 6 years old. So they're getting indoctrinated and they're getting groomed to be abused. But it's not them doing it. It's the adults who don't esteem themselves properly, who think, well, I can get a designer child out of this. That's not who teaches the children what a mother is supposed to be. Who teaches the women what maternal instincts are? And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to blanket statement, but when people think nobody's looking, they will do things. And the example you had used earlier when we were talking was the mother who rammed the cauliflower in the kid's mouth and held their mouth shut. She wouldn't have done that in a restaurant when people are around. So another client of mine, same thing. I got on a Zoom call and, she's telling me she's the better parent. She was having issues with her husband and she was just shaming her 6-year-old daughter. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, should I say something? I went out of the call and came back in and cleared my throat. And I'm like, but then she sits and tells me that she's a wonderful parent. I'm not a marriage counselor. I'm not here for that.
People believe it. Yeah.
But she could lie to my face and say, so I don't know whether I don't think she believed it, because what she ended up doing when she tried to triangulate me and get me to say something rude about her husband, she goes, I'm the better parent. And I said, finally, this is on Facebook. I said, I was there on that Zoom call when you were giving your daughter you were just shaming her. So then what does the mother do? She goes and takes this message over to her husband and goes, look what Sandy said about me, to try to get the husband against me. And he was a client too. He didn't buy into it. Doesn't matter. They ended up resolving their issues a year later. Just from what I can see, that they're happy and they moved and all kinds of things. But the games, and this is what people don't understand, these games land on somebody else. That mother talking to that daughter will affect her self-esteem going forward. And this is where we don't take responsibility. This thing here is probably the biggest weapon we have, is the words we speak and what we say to dress people down. I've kind of built up a bit of Teflon out here because I was getting very vocal on different social media platforms about what's going on with the trafficking. I just said it, but people would come out of you and believe how they would attack. And it's like,
why would they be upset if you're trying to say, hey, look out for our children?
So I figured out a lot of the ones who are doing the attacking on social media, they work for the 3-letter agencies. And I think they work for the traffickers of the past, but they're bringing them out of retirement. Nothing else makes sense. And so who created who created social media? 3-letter agencies. So, they're so funny with me. They would even go by agent this, agent that. And they were just mocking me because I hadn't figured it out yet. Anyways, that's water. It's done. It's over. It doesn't matter. I'm not out there doing it anymore because nobody in a position of power is speaking up, except for T-Man when he says he's getting rid of all this gender stuff.
Yeah, there's a couple that will say things, but that's out of the majority who probably have something over their head to be quiet.
So that's not what's happening. I'm talking the middle ground. So I was listening to Louder with Crowder. I've never listened to this guy before. He can be a little colorful in his words, but he was just criticizing the whole thing, and they're just laughing. And it's like, good. Now we're seeing more of the men stand up, but they still need to have some people come out and say, okay, can you name the 5 or the 7 different types of love and give examples of each of them? But we're not taught that. Only one involves sexual intimacy when you're old enough to understand. And here's why. Can you imagine parents having those skills and not the skills, the information that they can word it how they want, but to say to their children, they're really
Right.
pushing you into this. This is not in your best interest. And this is
Yeah.
why.
It's like either or, it's so funny because with all the different array of choices of, gender identity, you either love them or you don't love them. You either hate them or you love them, no matter what. Instead of recognizing that love is not gender based.
No, it's not. And so this is exactly, but
Yeah.
you're offering a solution in what you just said. So how do you define relationships? Relationships require trust. They require fidelity. They require a tremendous amount of respect, common interests, and love. This is what the foundation of any great relationship.
Yeah.
Right. But why aren't the teens being taught that? They're getting taught that, oh, let's go out in your hooker chic outfits when you're 12 years old. And again, it's the physical that's going to change. It changes for everybody, but they're not taught that. So we need some new information, but we can do this one. We can have a whole conversation on this.
And I'd love to come back with you sometime and talk about even more, well, obviously more on all this stuff that we could totally go on about because we have thoughts on things, but also maybe come back another time and talk about, like, say, dowsing and Reiki and
Sure.
and energy and all that stuff. Share with people that might not know that much about it, and then also how people can help themselves just,
Totally. And the first one is the desire. I want something to stop, or I want something to improve, or I want something
yeah,
to change. And it doesn't matter, right? Everybody's at a different level, no right or wrong, but we all have it in it because we all have the same hardwire as the organic human. So we've all got these abilities. It's just a matter of how we turn them back on. That's what I see.
and really, I may go on to do another show right after this, because a lot of times I will do talks, on here about you know getting, identifying with your higher self, not only your physical self, because we all know, like, we go out shopping because we think it's going to make us feel better. A new pair of shoes, a new car, and some people like this whole idea about the physical material world and how, if only this, then I'll feel better. And then there's that buyer's regret.
Yes.
And that goes into, even physical changes. We've all seen, like, plastic surgery. People just keep going. Sometimes you're like, what are you doing?
I know. And they're
Anyway,
all
so
external sources of self-esteem.
external, and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Who you marry, what your degree is, who your kids are, what they do, where you live,
Yeah.
all
A
those
new
things.
wife, a new wife, a new wife, or a new husband, a new husband, and more sex, more sex. Yeah, whatever they might think it is. So yeah, thanks for the idea.
Go for it. And when we all start talking, like, or not all of us, but more of us start talking about the self-esteem and give examples of it, little things like that, it just helps people get a clear picture in their mind eye of what's possible and get themselves back to themselves, right?
And some things are harmless, like me and my tarot decks and pendulums and crystals. Some things are
And not
fairly
everybody
harmless.
has that opinion, but the problem is they think they can
Yeah.
tell you what to do.
No, I'm talking about, like, collecting.
Oh, okay.
Oh, a new tarot deck or a new beautiful crystal or a new piece of jewelry. But yeah, then you got to balance. It's about how permanent is this and what does this do, and then there's the whole opinion about, like, the devil's getting me because I like tarot decks. But yeah, I'll just pray that he stays away. Anyway, so all right.
Okay.
Anyway, Sandy, I guess we're going to wrap it up. We've been on here for a little while, and I'm so grateful that you spent time with me, and look forward to talking to you soon.
And I'm happy to be here. I always enjoy our chats for sure, because we're almost like the Star Trek of the energy world, right? We go anywhere.
We are. And I'm just going to go ahead and stop recording, and then we'll say another goodbye.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Bye, everybody.